Hello and welcome back. This is The Lost Adventurer, and today's module we're going to go over is going to be Queen's Harvest. The 12th book of the B series. This adventure was also written by Carl Sargent, who was the author of B12, King's Festival. This adventure has two distinct parts of it. The first one is designed for 5 to 7 player characters of the first or second level, and the follow-up adventure is set for player characters of the second or third level. For the first part, your characters will either A, be showing up at Stalinford, the small village that was the main setting for B11, or were the actual adventurers that played in B11. If they were the actual players that played in B11, they'll actually have a note that says they're supposed to go visit a wizard named Kevorkian and warn him about something. If these players are new and have not played King's Festival, the town's cleric named ALOT will give them a message tube to have it delivered to the wizard Kevorkian, who happens to live in the nearby town of Penhaligon. Now, the players, there is a few things to do in Stalinford if they need to. Stalinford does have an armorer in it and an inn. That's really about all that's there. And Penhaligon's an actual town, so it should have pretty much everything the players need. Kevorkian's house is actually going to be in the outskirts of Penhaligon. The book says that it's about 12 miles away, and it should only take about a day's travel to get there. I think it says 6 hours. It should take the players 6 hours to get to Kevorkian's house in Penhaligon. Once the players reach Penhaligon, they'll observe that there's a walkway heading up a hill to a bunch of very nice houses, and one of these houses actually has got a bunch of symbols around the entranceway, and any magic user or elf will observe these to be magic ruins, leading the players to believe this is probably a wizard's house. Now, once the players knock on the door, a liveried manservant will answer the door. I changed this up for a guard, and he'll look at them, frown a bit when they say they're here to see the wizard Kevorkian, and inform them that the wizard's been dead. In fact, he's been dead for about 3 weeks. Then he tells the player characters that if they just hang out here for a bit, he's going to go find someone to talk to him. Eventually, after you make the players wait for a little bit, make them, squirm in their boots, a butler, a very well-dressed butler, will come to the door and ask him a few questions. The questions are up to you. The butler's opinion of the player characters should be made obvious, as he looks disdainfully at anybody wearing armor and looks suspiciously at anybody wearing leather. He'll let the player characters into the manor, ask what their names are, and if there are any rogues or thieves in the party, he will also obviously start counting the number of silver objects inside the room. He will then inform the players that he will obtain the master and he'll be able to help them further. He will return a few minutes later, and he'll be with a younger man. He will announce this man as Lord Karen Penhaligon. I'd like to point out that the name of the town you are outside of is also called Penhaligon. Beyond the fact that he's a young man, another thing that may stick out to the player characters when they see him is he's missing an arm. An entire arm is gone. At this point, the player characters should probably offer the letter to this Lord Karen Penhaligon. However, the players don't hand over the letter and also don't give a very good reason why they're at the house of this dead wizard, they will be politely asked to leave. In which case, the DM is supposed to, later that day, have the characters then shoehorn back up there because ALOT from Stalinford will have sent a messenger to make sure that the player characters got there safe, and once it's found out the player character is supposed to deliver something, Karen will then send some men-at-arms to go retrieve them and tell them to deliver the item to them. Once everybody gets over the whole part of, actually delivering the letter to this Lord Karen Penhaligon and the fact that Kevorkian's dead, Karen will read the letter. And after he reads the letter, it's obvious that he's a bit alarmed and concerned. He does not know exactly what the letter means, but says that he will take advice from a cleric who will be visiting him shortly. However, in the meantime, he has a deal he wishes to make with the player characters. Karen Penhaligon will point out the fact that his last name is the exact same as the town they're in, and he will inform the players that Kevorkian, the wizard who originally owned the house, was the brother of the lord of the town. Now, Kevorkian didn't have any kids of his own, however, he adopted Karen as a kid. Now, Karen's uncle, also the brother of Kevorkian, was actually the Lord of Penhaligon, and he had two daughters, one legitimate and one not so legitimate. Both of the older Penhaligons are both deceased at this time. However, the legitimate daughter is currently the ruler and noble of Penhaligon. And even though she's not blood related to Karen himself, she has graciously given him the title of Lord so he can continue being a noble. Now, onwards to the deal. So, Karen, as the adopted son of Kevorkian, has inherited the house. However, there's a couple things he wants from the house. However, he can't really get it right now because they're in the basement. The wizard's basement, which is sort of like a dungeon, which is full of traps. And he doesn't have an arm. So he offers to hire the player characters to go down there and collect two specific items. A very nice looking sword with an unmistakable gem set hilt and pommel, and also a very exquisite diamond tiara. Anything else, the player characters are perfectly good to take as their reward on top of the gold he's offering them. There is a single caveat though. They have to complete this mission within the next 2 days. So the rewards, if the player characters are able to obtain the items within 48 hours, is 250 gold pieces, which can be brought up to about 300 gold pieces, along with any items they find in the wizard's basement, minus that sword and tiara. Should the players fail to be able to obtain the two items in 48 hours, they will still be allowed to keep any items they find, but they will not be paid for it. Karen will then inform the players that there shouldn't be anything too dangerous down there. His father wasn't about killing everybody all the time. They should mostly be non-lethal traps. Once the players accept, Karen will offer to also give them a staff of healing if they do not already have one from playing in B12 King's Festival. Once they're in the basement, the basement adventure really is, I don't know how else to put it, it's not that great. There's a few new creatures they have in here, these things called phase stingers, which I think of, they pretty much look like the ball with the spike on it from Phantasm, if anybody's seen that. That may be a little bit too old for some people, but think Phantasm with the glowing, the metallic ball that floats around the stinger and stabs you, but does non-lethal damage and paralysis. There's this other new creature inside here too called a Magian. They're mainly just, they look like people, but they've been magically created, and they are sentient apparently. The only real danger that will be in this dungeon is an NPC encounter that happens at the end. In between, you're supposed to also do another NPC encounter. It's two thieves that they run into. This is the standard trope of two really good-looking women that they run across that try and pretend they're not thieves and end up trying to steal from the party. This would actually be a pretty good port over for the thieves from Palace of the Silver Princess. So there is that, but they don't really have any other impact other than that. However, at the end of this basement that they're currently going through, right before they get to the final pieces they need to give to Karen, they will run into another NPC party. This party consists of 4 individuals, and it's going to be a level 1 dwarf, a level 2 fighter, a level 3 cleric, and a level 3 magic users. And these guys are not good guys. In fact, there's a whole fight that ends up happening overall. And at the end of it, if the player characters end up capturing any of them alive, they will not talk or tell them the reason why they were down there. Once they've defeated the evil party, they'll find there was actually a secret entrance to get down to exactly that room. And once they climb up this ladder, that's the secret entrance into this room, They will be greeted by multiple men wearing chainmail and swords and do not look very happy. In fact, there's a body being dragged away behind them. They will eventually notice that one of the people is Karen, and Karen will tell them that the butler was evil, and he actually let the evil party in there, and there was a little bit of revolt up in the rest of the house while they were downstairs. Now, one of the chainmail-clad warriors with Karen is an older male, about in his 60s, with gray-white hair and pale blue eyes, and Karen introduces him as Baron Sherlane. Now, Sherlane doesn't really have much interactions with the player characters. However, the few interactions he does in the next, 3-4 paragraphs are actually of great importance. You see, the player characters, once they retrieve the tiara and the sword, they will have also obtained 2 spell books and a notebook. Inside this notebook, on the last page, is supposed to be a handout you give the player character. This handout is actually the final journal entry, in which case Kevorkian is talking about how there is a bandit queen up in the mountains that is amassing a large army and believes it may be trying to come down to Penhaligon so the bandit queen can claim her birthright, leading Kevorkian to believe that it's actually the illegitimate older daughter of the previous Lord Penhaligon. Now, while we're doing all this, Karen will be extremely excited to gotten the tiara and the sword and will tell everybody that he currently has an event he has to go to and he'll be back later. So Baron Sherlane then becomes the primary quest giver for the second part of this adventure, which consists of a trek up the mountains and a long-running battle between the player characters and about 100 or so enemy monsters, to include bandits, ogres, hobgoblins, goblins, evil sorcerers, and finally, eventually, the evil queen herself. Should the players decide they want to just rush the front gates of this castle all in one go, they will die. It says inside the book that player characters should be encouraged to do a series of hit-and-run tactics against the castle for as long as it takes to deplete the garrison. You, as the dungeon master, are supposed to keep a running tally of how much of the garrison is left, and supposed to do the whole psychological aspect of how the defenders react to the player characters continually killing off members of the garrison. I'm not going to lie. It took me a while to get through this adventure. It's pretty railroady, and it has the illusion of trying to be sort of sandboxy, but I was not a fan of this adventure at all. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that I personally was not much of a fan of it. In regards to rating, I would probably give this adventure an adventure rating of 2, 2.5, 3. I'm just going to say 3. 3 out of 5 torches. It's an okay adventure. I think it's just trying to pretend to be more than what it's supposed to be. For the value rating, I'll actually give it 4 out of 5 torches. You can get it print on demand for about $10 to $12, depending on what the current deals that are going on at DM's Guild /DriveThruRPG. It's an okay adventure. I just didn't like it. Just because I didn't like it doesn't mean that you won't like it or find it useful. Deadliness factor? I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 also. The beginning whole basement part is really not that deadly. Most of the monsters are supposed to cause paralysis instead of death. It's just a question of whether or not they're going to get paid more money at the end. The castle itself, I mean, if the players are not thinking all that well, yeah, they're going to die. However, if they take their time and work through it, they'll be able to defeat everything inside the castle too. Altogether, I'm going to give this adventure, I would actually rate it altogether a 2 out of 5. Not a 3 out of 5 like the numbers say they're supposed to be, but my personal rating is 2 out of 5. Well, I hope this helps somebody out there, and I'll see you guys for the next module I review. I think I'm going to actually try and do B10, Night's Dark Terror. That actually is a module that, so far, I've actually enjoyed reading about. So, until next time, see you guys.